Ecocriticism. The word ecocriticism was first used in 1978 by the critic William Ruckert in his essay Literature and Ecology, an experiment in ecocriticism. Early eco-critical approaches focus on the role of the environment in literature. It is concerned with how literature represents the environment and how this might contribute to understanding the environmental crisis of the contemporary world. Recent eco-criticism has moved beyond the concern for the environment to questions about the human as a part of the ecosystem. In particular, eco-criticism questions anthropocentrism, the way in which human thinking is centered on the human subject, and how this shapes our perspective on the world and our treatment of it. Early eco-critical responses tend to posit culture and nature as binary opposites. Culture is understood as a human-made world of ideas and built spaces. Nature is considered to be a tangible physical space that we can locate, rooted in plant and carbon-based forms. Later eco-criticism, however, has complicated the idea of nature by suggesting that nature itself is a human-made construction, a kind of ideal space imagined in opposition to the human world. Like post-colonial criticism and feminism, eco-criticism can be seen as part of a wave of theories that returns to us the materiality of the world and asks us to think about literature's relationship to that materiality. Eco-criticism is focused on tracing environmental themes in literary works or establishing the influence of literature on ecological thinking. Rather than restricting itself to these spheres, the power of eco-criticism lies in its disruptive questioning possibilities. Thinking through the environment strikes at the core of definitions of the human, which are implicated in thinking about racial, gendered, and disabled identities in particular. To invoke an ecological way of thinking in the service of identity politics is to recognize eco-critique with the potential to create new modes of identity. Smith argues that it is only this kind of ecological thought that can counter the recourse to humanism that exists in even the most radical contemporary philosophy. Therefore, ecological thought has an explicitly political function. Bruno Latour, for example, sees ecological crisis as central to political crises. Born out in the events of the Arab Spring, for example, which environmentalists have argued were in part driven by climate change. For Latour, it is not enough simply to reconcile humanity and nature. There must be a radical rethinking of the very idea of nature and its relation to questions of politics. Understanding the non-human, Latour argues, means having to engage in a democratic process of equal rights. The result of this means an acceptance of democracy more generally as ethical government. More widely, it means a commitment to a genuine and inclusive democracy. What is the relevance of eco-critical theory for literary studies? Timothy Morton, in Ecology Without Nature, makes a call for what he calls an ambient poetics, a way in which the form of narrative may suggest a particular open and expansive relationship to nature. Central to ambient poetics for Morton is what he terms ecomimesis, a scrupulous attention to the environment instead of the person. In its weakest form, this mimesis exists whenever a place is described. When a writer engages with landscape and place, they shift the reader's focus away from their anthropocentrism. In a stronger form, ambient poetics gives literature a profound ambience, a deep sense of place and situatedness. It transforms representation. Morton describes this as a process where place is not simply copied but rather is remade as a compelling illusion. This means that fiction that engages with the eco-critical cannot be straightforwardly realist. Morton outlines 6 features of an ambient work. The first rendering suggests an attempt to simulate reality itself. The second, medial writing, describes the way in which the form of writing, particularly its visual appearance, means that contact becomes content. This means that the form of the piece becomes its meaning, rather than merely reflecting or enhancing it. This is followed by the timbral, which explains the musicality of the form, the accordion, which pertains to a text presence outside subject or author, and then tone, described as a quality of vibration. These later features are expressed by use of parenthesis, hyphen, and the placement of words on a page as well as their rhythm. The final element of ambient poetics is defined by what Morton calls a remark, a kind of echo, which might be seen as similar to a modernist leitmotif. The purpose of such echoes is to bring spaces and the voices within them inform the margins, to destroy the notion of the in-between and instead demand that the marginal voice is allowed relevance to political and ethical decisions. It is with this final factor that the relationship between ambient poetics and other identity theories become clearer. For the ambient text is a spokesperson for the politics of recognition. It demands that voices are heard and uses form to speak to this, not simply in the specific terms of the environment, but also a more universal politics. The eco-critical focus on the human can also be seen as an extension of the post-human project, in that it asks questions about the relationships between humans, animals, and environment. It therefore takes the ideas such as Deleuze and Guattari's and Rosi Braidotti's becoming animal and Massumi's concept of playing animality and consider how these ideas might shape our understanding of literature. A key philosophical engagement with the animal comes in Derrida's essay, The Animal That Therefore I Am. In this essay, Derrida describes how the encounter with a cat or any animal asks us to consider our own body. Naked in front of the cat, his embarrassment distinguishes him from the animal, whose nakedness does not exist because an animal has never thought to dress itself. In nature, there is no nudity. In the encounter with the animal, Derrida declares we come to see the absolute other and to think what it means for that other to look at us. Anthropocene, Morton's idea of a dark ecology, the sense of an ecological disaster not waiting to happen but that has already arrived. Morton's vision of an ecological crisis in progress speaks to the concept of the Anthropocene. This is a term given to describe the current environmental age in which now we live, one in which the human effect on the environment can be seen to have shaped its future irrevocably. The term is a combination of Greek roots, anthropo meaning human, scene meaning new. In the humanities, the Anthropocene is usually used to denote the profound and negative impact of humans on the environment. It signifies a period in which human-centered living has overwhelmed nature and dramatically altered not merely the natural environment but our sense of our own place in the world. This centeredness has ideological consequences in that it reinforces a reawakened humanism, possibly with all the same consequences as old humanist ideas.